Can you bring up the Steve Martin photo again? Because this is another one.
Yeah.
I think anybody would kill for a photo to represent them like this. I don't know what made you or him or whatever think of putting, I don't even know what that is, like a heating
It's
equipment or whatever.
backstage. It's backstage. So much of my work is done very quickly backstage.
It's a
And
brilliant photo.
That was in Vancouver, and I just like the stillness of it. Again, it's not. How many times Steve Martin? He's got to be like stepping on something crazy or holding a dead flowers, or it's like always that sort of something goofy has to be happening. And instead, it's just this stillness, which is what I felt from him.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hey,
what's up, guys? How are you?
Good. How are you, man?
How are you?
Good. Yeah. So,
did you know you were my first? Yeah, no problem.
I didn't.
You didn't? Yeah, you were. Yeah,
I guess it doesn't count. I guess like what first grade school photos don't count. They're not professionals. They are
laser
professionals.
Backgrounds.
Yeah. They are professionals.
That's true. That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.
But we can't, But
I would say then first comedy
first okay, fair enough. And thank you for not calling it a headshot photographer. I like that as well.
Oh no, it was so cool, man. I mean, I had a couple of headshots before that. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you this right now. My first, I started doing stand up. I got Sony used to have a website called Crackle back in the day. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, I used to work for Crackle. I did a bunch.
Way.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later. We should bring that up later.
I will. I won the comedy contest, whatever the fuck they were doing. I had posted like they had run some kind of video stand-up thing. You had to post like 3 minutes of a set,
right.
And I posted my stand-up, and I won whatever it was. I was featured on the main page. It got a bunch of views. They sent me like a thing, but they were like, I think it was an opportunity to open for Bruce, which, by the way,
right?
That's. Little polar opposite there. Yeah,
that's your crowd. That's your crowd.
Yeah,
come on,
absolutely. House of Blues, baby.
Yeah.
So, but it was cool. But they were like, "You need a headshot," and I was like, "Fuck, I don't have a headshot." I ran to the mall and got glamour shots done.
Nice.
Yeah, and they were at first they were like, "No." They're like, because they were like, there's kids and shit. And I was like,
right.
I'm begging you, I need this for a thing. And they were like, all right, sit down on the horse.
Right. Did they put you on the fur, like the fur rug?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. So those were technically my first headshots. It was fucking brutal,
Nice. Yeah, we went up to the High Line. We can show those later.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of stuff around the High Line that was good when that had just reopened.
Yeah, and that's a testament to you, man, because I did not think of I didn't know where to go, and you were like, "Oh, we got to go to the High Line." Like that was the first thing you had said to me, and I was that's a great fucking idea.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, my favorite photos.
I think good angles.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was great. And what's really funny too is you did the you had a showcase at Gotham, like I think that year probably. And
you mean of my photos, you mean?
Yeah, of your photos.
Yeah.
And they were all new ones. Oh yeah, it's still up.
Oh right.
Well,
I just refreshed it.
Oh, you did? Oh, you did? Nice. Okay, then I'm probably gone. But
no, I had at the time is what I was saying.
Oh, got you. Yeah. So then mine is, and I love Chris Mazzilli. So there were I know him really well now and whatever. But at the time, I was still like, I was in the circuit. I was doing the Gotham Comedy Club, but I wasn't, I didn't know Chris that well. But your photo, it was John Oliver, Eddie Brill. Oh my God. The guy from Cash Cab. I'm such a dick. What's his name? I love that dude.
Ben Bailey.
Thank you. Wow. I'm going to edit that so it looks like I didn't forget his name. Just kidding.
We are live.
Yeah, we're live. Yeah, too late. Ben Bailey and then me. And I always imagine Chris just walking by going, who the fuck? This kid. But it was great, man. I took a photo of it. I was sending, my photo's below John Oliver's. So,
I'm about to redo all that. They just repainted Gotham and redid the
nice
refresh the club, and so I'm going to go back there probably in June and refresh the photos again.
Sweet, man.
So Yeah, especially the big ones. We're gonna put some new big ones up in there in the hallway.
Oh, that's great, man. Those are beautiful photos, man. I mean,
Thank
they
you.
really are. Like, everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. You know, the one, I feel like Ellen DeGeneres, Louis Black, Jon Stewart, those are the iconic ones, and Robin Williams that are up there. Everybody fucking knows those photos.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
When you were younger, was it like apparent that you were going to do this, or did you have another ambition?
Well, I was a super comedy nerd from when I was like, before they had a word for it, you know, like I was like 13 when I was collecting comedy vinyl, and
Nice.
like I got my first stereo, and my parents gave me some albums, and it was like Crosby, Stills and Nash and some other thing, and I didn't even like break the seal on them. I brought them right back to Rainbow Records and exchanged them for George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Steve Martin. So I was like, so I was really super into comedy in that way, but I never really thought like I was going to be a comedian. Because I don't like have this desire to perform, but I just loved the history of comedy, and I liked, I was a collector as for vinyl and things like that. And I just loved being part of it. And the photography part came later, because when I went to college at Santa Clara University, I was the comedy director there, so I started booking shows and things that. But all of my photography, all of my part-time jobs were in photography, and then it wasn't until I graduated and went to work at the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco that I married the two of them together. Because when comedians found out that I was a photographer, then they started asking me to shoot them, and. At the time, all the I've been going to live comedy. My first live comedy show was when I was 13. And
who'd you see?
Oh, wow!
I saw Tim Bedore. Maybe I was 14, but it was definitely.
How did you get in?
I wasn't even 16. It was at a one-nighter in Santa Rosa at a place called Jeremiah's Steakhouse.
Wow!
So there was all ages.
Sweet.
And Tim Bedore is a great comic. He was a DJ at a club at a station called The Quake, which was the new wave station in the Bay Area. And but they were the first people like anywhere that I knew of that they were putting comedians on as DJs. And the morning guy was Alex Bennett, who was basically lit the fuse for the comedy boom of the 80s.
Wow.
And so it was really a seminal station. So I would go and go see live comedy when I was really, really young. But when I would ever go to clubs, all the walls were all plastered with the black and white 8x10s.
Right.
And it was all the same thing. It was all just like, people with their mouths open, like, like open mouth equals funny.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. This
or,
thing.
Yeah. Or there's this one. I don't know. I know. I'm so funny.
That's so great.
And so I was like, God, this shit is so tired and everything. So even from the beginning of when I started shooting, I was always trying to do something a little bit different. And since I was, I was a sort of trained as a portrait photographer. I started out doing senior portraits. And so I was trained as a portrait photographer. So I always sort of was looking beyond just like the headshot, and try to show a little more personality and things like that. So that's sort of how my sort of style grew with that. But I was always sort of not interested in joke photos per se.
Sure.
So most of my stuff is not jokey.
I like that a lot.
Very, very rarely. And the people that like it the most are the comedians.
Yeah.
The people that didn't like it were like editors of newspapers or magazines. They always wanted funny photos.
Yeah. And it's fucking brutal when you're with, I mean, again, those guys are
Yeah.
professionals too. And they have an art to their style too. But I used to hate when I would go to get a photograph done and they would be like, all right, what if you toss spaghetti in the air? Yeah. I swear to God, somebody suggested that to me, by the way. And I was just like, yeah, I don't do that kind of shit anyway. Like, it's not really what I'm about. And we just said, Tom, you're muted.
I said wet or dry. Like, which one was it?
They want it. I'm not kidding.
Wet
Cooks,
spaghetti.
they're like, toss like wet, and then see where it lands on you, and then we'll take that. And I was just like, or
not. Yeah, it was. I remember talking to Greg Proops, and he told me about how this photographer wanted to put him into clown shoes. Here, it'll be really funny if you wear these giant shoes. And it's like,
oh my God,
how could you not, like, how much further away from knowing Greg Proops could you be than suggesting that he wears clown shoes?
Yeah.
He's like the smartest, sharpest, most intellectual guy, but here, put on some fucking clown shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it's just always fucking brutal. That's what I loved. I think your photos were the first ones I really saw in books and stuff that that had comedians, actually kind of posing in a way that was like different, like not silly, not goofy.
Yeah.
Really, really like kind of took their personalities off of the stage onto a page, and it was really cool.
Right. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I think that a big part of that was the fact that like I knew my subject, right? So
yeah,
if you're a newspaper photographer and on any given week you're shooting a football player, a businessman, and then they say go do a comedian, it's like, oh, okay, now the football player's got to look tough, the businessman's got to look like a shark, and the comedian's got to be funny. But for me, it's like I almost always knew someone's act, and I knew their personality, and so I would, like, my formula was to make them comfortable enough that their own personality came through.
Right.
And so I know I've got it in the shoot, and then the bonus to it is the fact that I knew them enough to pick the one that really captured it.
Yeah.
I think, and
absolutely.
So that was like my formula.
Yeah, and that worked well. I mean, that was one of those things where that's why I appreciated that shoot so much too, and the time you took to like figure out which ones to send me or whatever, because I fucking used those shots probably longer than I should have. They were like, you're older now, and I was like, yeah, no, but it still works.
Just don't use them on a dating site.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those don't go over well. I use my Glamour Shot strictly on a dating site.
Right. For that, go back to the original ones, the mall shots.
Yeah, the black and whites with the little bit of a gleam in your forehead. That's it.
Right. So I mean, surely those are somewhere on your laptop that you have right now.
Oh yeah.
So
they are there.
Right. So okay. So I'm not showing any photos until you show your fucking mall photo.
I'll get it. I will get.
Okay. We gotta see it. Come on, man.
We're gonna do it. I'll get it right now. We're gonna bring that mall photo up.
Cool.
God, this is a brutal one, man. This is a fucking
awesome though.
Yeah. In the meantime, while we're doing that though, what was it? Who was your first? I want to know who your first comedian was that you shot, but who was your first big one too?
Let's see. I mean, the first comedian that I shot at all that was like a portrait. I mean, I started taking pictures on stage, like of shows that I was producing at school. So that didn't really count because I really consider it myself mostly to be a portrait photographer. Right. And for me, like live stand-up comedy photos aren't that interesting personally.
Right.
I mean, they can be if you've got someone that's really visual, but in general, person with a microphone, not as interesting.
They're also my very first hard portrait, to take, which is insane.
They're just, you have to have a lot of patience. And it's similar to concert photography, but you have to have a lot of patience. And it's hard to get one that's really worth looking at, I find. It's just a lot of just like people with a microphone, just like the kind of version of like folk music where it's just person with a guitar,
Oh yeah.
So it's it's hard to get something really worth looking at. But the first comedian that I photographed as a portrait was a guy named Ray James, that was a regular at the Holy City Zoo, and
nice.
He was a writer. He ended up moving to LA, like most of the San Francisco comics eventually did. Did a lot of writing, political type guy. So he did a lot of like political writing and things like that. Very funny, and he was like one of the sort of original edgelords of San Francisco, but not in a bad way. Like he was, he always pushed it. I mean, I don't mean it like a internet edgelord. I mean it like a sort of guy that was always pushing. He was always pushing,
the boundaries
and stuff like that. Yeah, and was not afraid to offend but not doing it for offense sake, and he did it for all the right. He did it for all the right reasons. He was creative, really good, very good, and well respected comic.
Right.
But then probably the first biggest comic that I shot was Margaret Smith.
Oh no way!
If you remember who she she ended up, she's a producer now. I don't know if she does any stand up now, but she's like produced Ellen and a lot of stuff like that. So I went and took her out to. I loved her, and I really loved her style and everything.
She's awesome.
And she was hanging out at the Holy City Zoo, and we just decided, let's just go out to take some photos this weekend. So we went out to Berkeley and did a bunch of shots of her. She was great. I really wish she was still doing stand up, but she just like she kind of
she's
found
very,
a
very
better
funny.
and took yeah, like she was very dry and very dark, and I loved her. So she was my first like headliner comic, probably that was like a national headliner. Very cool.
They brought up the Holy City Zoo. Were you around when Paula Poundstone was there? And
I didn't work there then.
Oh, you didn't work there then? Okay.
No, but
I was that I've heard.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sonoma County, California, during the comedy boom. So I like, in all my friends and people at my, junior high and high school, their lockers were all filled with musicians, and, it was Prince and whatever, all the big stars of the pop stars of the 80s. And then my locker was filled with pictures of fucking comedians that nobody knew, all cut out from a local industry magazine called Just for Laughs, actually was the name of the newspaper. Yeah, but it had nothing to do with what now is Just for Laughs.
Yeah,
but it was like a physical newspaper that you could get every month that would list out every comedy show that was happening that month in the Bay Area. But so I knew who all those comics were. So it was, at the time, it was like there was this huge explosion of really unique comic voices that came out in the 80s. And it was people like Paula Poundstone, who I fucking loved.
Yeah.
There was nothing like seeing a live Paula Poundstone show, because it was different every time.
Yeah.
She is the master of crowd work. Paula, it was Bobcat Goldthwait, it was Tom Kenny, Bob Rubin, Will Durst, Jeremy Kramer, all these amazing like people that nobody else sounded like.
Right.
And you didn't quite appreciate it until the comedy boom rippled out everywhere else, and then there was comedians on television everywhere, and then you had the rise of the sweater comedian and all these like observational comics that were just Seinfeld clones and everything like that. And then you realize, wow, we really had it good with all these people that nobody sounded like. There are so many individual voices.
Yeah.
And so I came to work at the Holy City Zoo in 1992 when it was rescued from oblivion. It was always on. It was if you could imagine a club on a cliff, like picture fucking Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And let's look at the cliff that at any time could be sawed off and fall into the canyon. And let's put a comedy club on there, and let's give it let's make sure that its capacity is 79. And make sure it doesn't have a full liquor license. Make sure it can only serve beer and wine, and all the different ways that it can fail. No parking in San Francisco. All these different things. Put it in the basically the secondary Chinatown of San Francisco. But it was awesome, and we all loved it. But so I went to work there when it was rescued by Will Durst. And his
Robin
wife
Williams.
Debbie. Robin was always a benefactor to that club, and he had saved it a few times and infused it with money a few times. At this point, it was saved by Will and Debbie Durst, and then another family called the Foresters, who were in the industry and saved it and did the absolute best that they could, and it lasted another like 2 years.
Wow.
But at the end of it, like I started out, I moved to the city to come work at this club straight out of college, because I worked with the Foresters booking my college, and so I went there with the idea I was going to be tending bar and working in the club, because they had just saved it and reopened it, and they quickly realized we don't need two bartenders in a club that seats 79 and is usually filled with about 30, and two bartenders and a waitress. And so it was basically immediately relegated to the door, which ended up being the best thing for me, because I ended up hanging out outside and working the door. And this was in 92, and there was a huge influx of all these comedians who just moved there. And it was Mark Maron, it was Patton Oswalt, it was Tom Rhodes, and it was all these people who moved out there, which later became known as the class of 92. And I was part of that from a different angle, in the sense that I moved there to also come and work at this club. And but so I would just hang out front instead, and be able to go hang out and talk with all these comics. So that's how I became like friends with all these people. And then after a certain point, when they knew the club was closing, we had 3 months left. The rest of the staff bailed, and then we got the sort of junior varsity came in and took it over for like 3 months and got to run it for 3 months.
That's cool.
But we knew it was ending, but I got to like run the club for 3 months. And but for me, it's like I was 22 years old, and running a comedy club, and like I had a tap full of Anchor steam that I could just like put my mouth under if I wanted to, So it was the best. It was the best of all possible worlds.
Oh my God, that's phenomenal, man. I mean, that the scene in San Francisco was so crazy. I think, Tom, I just sent you here's my glamour shot, by the way.
All right.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
We'll start with the glamour shot.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, God.
Nice. Look at that handsome fella.
Oh man, yeah, that's black and white and classy, and that was it. Cheesy smile.
But that's a Hollywood. That's a Hollywood shot to like send out to casting directors, like,
That was the one I had to send out for a while. That was it. I sent that one out
until you upgraded, and then you.
There we go. Highline.
Yeah, Highline.
That was a cool.
That was fucking great. Perfect. I love those shots. They're great.
Thank you.
Killer. Yeah, man. The craziest thing is that like you were around. I didn't realize that you worked at the Holy City Zoo and you were kind of embedded in that comedy scene, because it explains so much about your involvement with like Satiristas and your love. Because like you can tell when somebody takes a photo and it's just kind of like, all right, this is just a client and that's a thing. And you can tell when it's somebody who admires the craft or the person that they're taking a photo of. Like the photo that you sent us with Mort Saul. It looks like you guys were friends, basically, right?
No,
not really.
Well, in a sense, I wouldn't say that. Mort is a prickly fella. He was a very prickly fella. But to be fair, I would not have said that we were friends.
Okay.
But I was trusted to go and take his 90th birthday portrait. That's what that's from.
That's what that's from.
And yes, so in this case, it was.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so that was certainly much later in my career, but he moved to Northern California and in Mill Valley. He lived in Mill Valley, and he was still working up until like the week that he died.
Mm-hmm.
In the case, so I always try and like hedge myself when I say like I'm with friends with someone, but yet there is the sense of trust. He used a portrait that I took of him. That it was his like Facebook profile for a long time, and so but when Satiristas came out, so first of all, it's a guy he wouldn't like. We wanted to interview him for Satiristas, but he's a guy who wouldn't be part of books about comedy unless the book was about him.
Oh,
wow.
So like when people, there was a great book done about rebel comedians of the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the living comedians that were part of the book were interviewed for it, and he wouldn't do it.
Wow.
But he would be part of a book that was about him. So he did a whole book, his like, authorized biography. But I took a picture. I had done this picture of him that was from earlier, and the thing is, he was using it as his Facebook profile, and we put it in the book just as a picture of him. And when the book came out, we did it like an opening, like a book launch thing at the Throckmorton Theater in Mill Valley,
mm-hmm.
and everybody came out like for it, and Mort came out for it, and I said, I just sort of got him at 1 minute. I said, "Hey, Mort, I just wanted to see if you, saw the photo and if you liked the book." And he says, "You know what? I didn't like the photo. I didn't like the book either." I'm like,
holy shit!
Okay, thank you.
Right. Yeah.
So the only person in the history of that book who told me they didn't like it was Mort.
Wow. That's a fucking badge. Did you at least put it on the back of the book as a quote?
I should. It was too late. I handed him the book.
Oh.
He had the book. And he walked out of the show because we had an intermission. That's when I talked to him, and then and he walked out of the show when Doug Stanhope was on stage, and he walks out, and the last thing I heard him say that night, he was talking to his handler. He's like, I mean, they have the freedom to, but do they have to? They're just talking about like Doug Stanhope's language and the subject matter.
Yeah, of course,
do they have to? It's like, oh God. So Mort, but Mort and I were not friends. But but it was coming up. But he didn't. I mean, I'm sure he didn't remember that he didn't like me. I photographed him another time. I photographed him with Dick Gregory.
Yeah.
And I would see him. I photographed him with Robin Williams at the Throckmorton, stuff like that. So he didn't hate me or anything. We just were like super buddies. And then when I heard that it was going to be his 90th birthday, I just approached the theater, and the owner of the theater was like his guardian, and said, "Hey, someone should do Mort Saul's 90th birthday portrait." And she's like, "Absolutely, you're the person. Come to his house." And we did. And he was the nicest person. He was the nicest to me ever. That last time that I saw him. At his house, and we sat down and talked comedy in a way that we never did before, and it was very comfortable, and that's what came through in that picture, I think.
Okay, wow, yeah, because that's why I assumed. I was like, that's pretty intimate.
We were friends. I'll put it this way: we were friends for an afternoon.
There you go.
So we'll say that. So
how many people can say that? Yeah,
right. So
that's phenomenal. I got to ask you a little bit more, because you were talking about people you couldn't get for the book Satiristas. Anybody that you wanted that you actually couldn't get or wasn't available at the time that you wish you could
sure. I mean, there were people that had photos of that we couldn't get interviews from.
Right.
Chris Rock. We really wanted Chris Rock. Jon Stewart. We didn't get an interview from Jon Stewart. We did get Colbert though,
which was great. I was talking to Preventa about that, which I thought at the time there'd been so much interviewing. Like I've never really seen this. I love that photo.
Yeah, me too.
I never really read. She seems like a fucking sweetheart, like just a phenomenal person.
Awesome.
But the cool thing about the Colbert interview, I hadn't read a lot or heard a lot about him kind of deconstructing comedy in that way before that interview came out in the book. Yeah. So that was perfect. That was a good addition.
That's all Paul, man. He has the ability to get to the heart of the matter with it. To be fair, we were sort of just ahead of our time in the sense that at the time there weren't a lot of comedy photographers. Now, now every city has 2 or 3, which is great. Great. By all means, document the scene, and there's really good ones everywhere. A lot of people putting their own stamp on it. Really cool. And there wasn't a lot of like comedian on comedian interviews, but Paul had a show on Comedy Central that was called Comics Only. That was the harbinger before any of this comic hang podcasting. So he had all these people that already trusted him. And so when he sat down with them to interview him for the book, they really opened up. They already, you're already sitting down with someone that's you might have done 2 or 3 on camera interviews in the 90s with the guy for Comedy Central. So he was the one. But now he got to just talk about the heart of comedy and not about plugging your new thing.
Yeah.
So it was a real convergence of a lot of things that made that book, work what it is. And massive credit to Paul, who was able to not only do great interviews, but to create them and put them into a sequence where everyone flows into the next one. So you've got Lewis Black talking about Paul Krasner and the Disneyland orgy from the Realist, and then it goes right into Paul Krasner talking about doing that, and he just put together a real clinic in how to do an interview book that flows and creates an arc and asks a question and then answers it at the end. Yeah, you'll have to read the book to know what that question and answer is. But
I was going to say, exactly.
The question is, can comedy change people's lives?
Yes,
and their minds.
Right.
Can comedy change people's lives and minds? Yes.
Yeah, and the answers that everybody had, I liked the uncertainty of a lot of it. There were some people that were like, a couple people I think that were kind of like, it changed mine. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And other people were like, I honestly don't fucking know. I don't. And I liked that a lot. I liked the very idea of, I don't know what we're actually doing, but I'm enjoying doing it.
Yep. And some people just said no.
Yeah.
They can't, you know.
Yeah.
The people like, no, you're preaching to the choir or whatever. You're not. You're just you're reaffirming other people's belief, things like that. And
who the hell was it that said has it? Somebody pointed out, has it ever in his can you point to a time in history when it has?
Oh yeah, and it was and someone said it really changed they referenced the Weimar Republic in Germany.
Yes. Who was it? It wasn't Robin, was it?
No, it wasn't.
I can't remember who the hell it was, but I remember reading that and thinking like, holy shit, that's a good fucking point.
Right. Was it? It might have been Tom Lehrer. God, who was it?
I think it was Tom Lehrer. I think you're right.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
yeah. Think about, it's kind of cool too, because when you think about when did this came out in what, 2008?
It's 2010 was a publication.
2010. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2010. I like the kind of balance between importance and lack of self-importance that comedians seem to have for this kind of stuff. I think it's a healthy balance, as opposed to cut to like, and I'm not saying anybody necessarily started this kind of thing, but like, the comedy activism thing,
right.
Where like, but the weird part about the comedy activism thing is that's fine. Like you can totally be that court jester speaking truth to power. But I think what happened was, and why comedians are getting criticized or so scrutinized for their material is basically people saw what it could do, what a good joke could do, what kind of attention it could bring to a cause. If you had a well-constructed thought, or there's a comedian kind of presenting a thing, to a wide audience, and they got it through humor. And then I think because that's not a comedian's goal 100%, and for the most part, we're just trying to get laughs, that it shifted. And for the people that do want to have those propaganda pieces and that are working those machineries, they're like, fuck, no, we need you. You're not allowed to joke about this other shit because we need you to joke about the important crap. And then so they try to go, does that make sense? I feel like that's the course.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm talking about modern, in the more modern time, current contemporary time, people have given and assigned stand-up comedians this power they don't necessarily want,
right?
And then criticize them for using it, for using that power, or criticize them for not wanting the power. Right. So if someone says, look, man, I'm just joking. Like, you have to understand that these are just jokes. You're like, no, it has this power to do this thing.
Right.
It has the power to take this down and hurt me and hurt these people. So you don't understand the power you have.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, when some people go, you're right, I do have that power, then everyone says, fuck you, you're just a comedian.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Like how are they supposed to win?
I completely agree. And it depends on who can make money from it at a certain point too, because it's like, everything comes back to, some form of capitalism where, like, no matter what side you fall on the spectrum politically, they're still looking to they're like, okay, look, if this guy says this in this funny way and it's on our side, we can sell these fucking team shirts or whatever the hell it is, Same thing for either side. I remember during the pandemic, there was an account on Instagram that was, I don't know what their angle was necessarily, but it was obviously heavily pro BLM, like all that kind of stuff, which is great. But I remember them curating joke. Like, I would put up stuff and they'd share it. And as a comic, you're like, great. An account that's got a lot of followers is sharing my stuff. This is awesome.
Right.
And then it went from that to them putting it on t-shirts and shit, and then not giving anybody any money. Oh yeah. And then being like, hey, we have a Patreon now, and then people paying to see our content. And I was just like,
oh wait, yeah, right.
Fuck, man. I mean, like, God, I'm like, and on one hand, I'm like, oh, I'm glad my shit's getting out there, and also it's kind of for a good cause. And then I'm like, I don't know that it is. Some white dude's getting rich somewhere, making Instagram shit. It's fucking weird, man.
But it's also like, if they don't ask you, then fuck that.
Oh yeah, exactly. No permission.
Like, you can't be like, but it's for this, and I did it for this, and I did that for that. Well, if you don't ask me, then you're just stealing.
Exactly. And you have to kind of convey that without looking like an asshole, because they're like,
you think you're some fucking comedy Robin Hood, or something. Like, you're not doing it. Like, that's not. Ask me, and then maybe I'll give it to you.
Exactly. No, completely agree.
Yeah.
When you were so photography stuff, like when you're taking those photos, is it primarily all word of mouth when you're starting out, or are you chasing people down to go like, here's a guy I could really do some justice for, like take a good shoot and I think he'd like me?
Well, a lot of what I did. So I also took a lot of music photography because I was a house photographer at the Fillmore in San Francisco and the Warfield in San Francisco for 20 years. And along with that came the Punchline. So Punchline is one of the most respected and longest running comedy clubs in the country. But we also had Cobb, so I would do that. A lot of what I did was it was a good combination of just wanting to do it. I would do it for the clubs that I worked for. So I would shoot for the clubs. And then once I started like putting my stuff up in other clubs, put up the stuff in Gotham, stuff like that, and word would sort of spread. And so I could go to New York and just, they would say, here's our comics. Yeah. These are Gotham comics. They're around your pictures all day. They always talk about this stuff. So I would just be able to go into New York and do like 5-6 shoots in 5-6 days and like have a great time in New York and get paid and come back with money and everything. And so that was that kind of word of mouth. It was always sort of industry word of mouth of people like that. And then I started working for Just for Laughs in Montreal. And so, it was just sort of a groundswell of meeting people and them being able to see my work. It was really about getting the stuff out there. It wasn't really about website, and we didn't have the social media at the beginning. It was like, I put them up on the walls and everybody saw them and go, okay, I get what you're doing. I want to be part of that. I don't like people that ask me to mug. I like this sort of thing and how chill you are and everything else. And then that's sort of how that sort of snowballed.
Was there anybody supremely because I don't imagine comedians are necessarily prima donnas about their look, but maybe how they're presented. Was there anybody that was really difficult?
Not really. I mean, I could speak to a couple of people that I wouldn't want to tell that story about, but some there were a few, some legendary people that were a little prickly. And no one was, very few people were awful. And, I had the worst shoot I ever had was with a legendary woman. But yet the next time I saw her, she was the super peach and really sweet and everything. And like, oh, you're bipolar. Now I get it. I got you on that side. I got that one this time. And like the first time I shot her, great, fantastic. Everything's great.
Right.
Second time, horrible. Third time, fantastic. So I don't want to shit on her. But there's some, but the rock stars are way more prima donnas, for sure.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Comics in general are really pretty cool people, and they, when they were shooting me, they had a certain they already knew who I was. Not to be like they knew who I am, but like they already knew who I was, so they knew that I was sort of in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And so they were already comfortable enough sitting for me. So and I also the other thing is I also work really fast. So I don't sit through and have people like, I keep going. In the film days, I wouldn't shoot 12, 15 rolls of film. I would I was prepared and I would shoot fast and get people comfortable. And the word that I heard most of it was like, well, that was painless. And for a lot of comics, that was like sitting for still photos is really a painful experience for them.
Yeah.
They can watch videotape of them fucking all day long and listen to themselves on tape with 24 hours a day, but sit for still photos, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and trying to figure out how to smile and which way your head to, you're just like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. So
so speaking about some legendary comics sitting for still photos, right? I want to try to bring a few up just to discuss.
Sure. That was my guy. He was my hero. Between Steve Martin and George Carlin is how it started it all for me. And obviously Steve hung up his gloves. And George never did, and he kept going till the end. But he was like the guy for me. And the best thing that ever happened, the thing that happened with that is that I had given him a photo. Second time I shot him, I gave him that photo. And then a couple months later, I get a phone call and it's like, Dan, I'm like, it's George Carlin. it's George Carlin. Like, I'm not starstruck, but I was fucking zapped. I was totally starstruck at that point.
Right.
The fact that he would just ring me up.
Yeah.
It's like, I really love this picture. I really love this picture. I'd like to get another one and give it to my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. You know, give me your address. You'll have it. You know, you'll have it this week. And he's like, here's the thing. What do I owe you? I said, no.
Wow.
I'm giving. He says, Dan, I insist on paying you. He would not take it for free.
Wow.
And so, like, you know, usually the richer you are, the more you expect shit to be given to you for free. But he absolutely would not give it for free. And then when Paul interviewed him for Satiristas, he gave me like the best compliments I've ever had in my life. Which regarding my photography, he said Dan photographs from the inside out.
Oh,
like, holy shit! Like nobody's ever given me that kind of compliment, or probably ever will. And then he said it was the photo that he wanted to be remembered by.
Yeah.
And then he died 3 weeks later.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, you know, the book is dedicated to him. He's just always, in my mind, is the greatest that ever was.
Absolutely.
You know,
what was the impetus to get him up on the piano?
We were backstage in at a symphony hall. And I was just backstage with all these in all these dressing rooms, and I just wanted to put him somewhere that's a little bit different, but not like wacky. I didn't want him to be wacky or anything like that. And then I'm like, hey, how about you climb up on that Steinway?
Nice.
And he's like, perfect. And then later he was talking about that photo. He's like, this is kind of what we do. Like we're the kids that are sitting on the Steinway in the concertmaster's office. You know, that's who we are. Like. And so it sort of unwittingly created something that had a different meaning for him. So that's he's so awesome. And then I ended up becoming friends with his daughter, who's awesome, Kelly Carlin.
We had her on the show too. She's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And when the book came out, I went to her house, and I expected there to be Shrine of Carlin, of George. You know, there were 2 photos of George on the wall. There was the wedding photo, or the engagement photo between him and Brenda, his wife, and then there was my photo on the wall. I'm like, oh my God,
what an honor!
Like and so here's the thing. My career has been downhill ever since. It's never, you know, it's never going to reach that peak again. So I'm pretty much done.
Yeah, man. The picture reminds me of an interview that he had given, and when he was talking about himself and you know, how he wanted people to view him. And it's kind of funny that you said that he said, you know, that's who we are with little kids. Because he said he got into it because he wanted people to go, isn't he cute? Look at what George is doing. Isn't he cute?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's
he wanted to be Danny Kaye.
Yes.
That was his original hero, Danny
so
Kaye.
Funny to hear that too. But the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, because I mean, I love Danny Kaye. I loved all those movies. And I was like, oh my God, like the coolest comedian ever wanted to be Danny Kaye. That's so fucking cool.
Right. But he also says like, I'm not in it to make people laugh. It's
right.
Like, I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
Like, he was the guy who was like, it's not about you. I always did it for me. I love that honesty.
Me too. And the other thing that's so funny is that I feel like people don't really know. Like I would tell, like, you know, friends and family and stuff like that, even like whatever, when I got into stand up, and I'm like, yeah, you'd be surprised at comedians, like how little we give a shit whether the audience is enjoying it sometimes. And they're like, really? Like it's all about us. And I'm like, no, it is not. Like that is the wrong way to look at that shit.
Right.
We have something to say. We hope you'll find it funny. If you don't, we don't like you, and then we leave.
Right. We will blame you.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen Bill Maher when he was younger or now? The epitome of that. Can you bring up the Steve Martin photo again? Because this is another one.
Yeah.
I think anybody would kill for a photo to represent them like this. I don't know what made you or him or whatever think of putting, I don't even know what that is, like a heating.
It's backstage. It's backstage. You know, so much of my work is done very quickly backstage.
It's a brilliant photo.
That was in Vancouver, and I just like the stillness of it. You know, again, it's not. You know, how many times Steve Martin? He's got to be like stepping on something crazy or holding dead flowers, or it's like always that sort of, you know, something goofy has to be happening. And instead it's just this stillness, which is what I felt from him.
Yeah.
And that was my takeaway from that. Like, I just, when it was happening, I didn't tell him to do anything. I was just quiet and just shot and let him look. And that's, I love that shot. So, that was like my, you were saying like the people that I wasn't able to get. I mean, we weren't able to get him for the book, but I did get to at least take the photo have the portrait of him. And that was like my two biggies. So I got George and Steve. So
awesome.
Do you, when you're doing that kind of shoot, do you try to have, like, how hard is it to not have a personal conversation with a hero like that? If they're not willing, maybe they're trepidatious. Do you go for it? What is your...
At that level, it's hard, but you want to have some sort of relatability.
Right.
It's funny. It's just like a comic. You remember some of the bad things the most, and so I was just trying to make conversation with him. I'm like, oh yeah, I have my grandfather's old vintage banjo, it's really cool. And so he's like, really, what kind is it? And I went, I don't know. At this moment that I like really connected with them and being like, oh, it's this is blah, 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 blah. Nope, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, maybe don't say something like that if you don't, you got nowhere to go with it.
Oh my God. I've been in that fucking situation.
Oh man, wow. I just like had a moment with like one of my heroes that just went fucking nowhere.
Yep.
But it's still a good story.
It is a good.
Yeah. And then 2 years later, I was at JFL and Steve Martin was hosting a gala, and Provenza was there, and he was helping Steve punch up jokes for his monologue. And the writer's room was a converted freight elevator that they just put, moving blankets around and thing. And they're there. And Paul like basically snuck me in there. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm watching Steve Martin write and talk about what's funny and not, watching this between Provenza and him. And I'm like,
wow,
I don't belong here. Like, this is so, like this one moment I'm like, wow, I've been in a lot of places where I'm like, this is so cool. It's so great. I'm here. I'm like, wow, I don't really belong here. And then the head of the festival, Bruce Hills, walks in to like check on how things are going. And he's just like, Dan, hi. Like, wow. Okay, because I was just like, Paul, and we were there. The book had just come out. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. I'm out.
Oh,
he kicked me out in the nicest possible way, just going like, Dan, no.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in here at this point. But it was cool.
That
is cool. Speaking of Paul, I want to bring up his too.
There you go.
Great shot.
This is the first. This is like 2 days after I met him. We were in Australia, 2006 at the what they called the Cracker Festival, and The Aristocrats had just come out. In fact, it was just out on DVD. Nice. And I met him at the Comedy Store in Australia, where I just put up an exhibition. And I mean, it was just like one of those fast friends thing. It's just like I met him that night. We went out drinking that night. And neither of us is like a raging drinker. We're just like beer drinkers or whatever. But like we can go. Long time. And especially we started talking about comedy, and we just hours talking about our favorite comics, and like fucking Dana Gould and like all these people that like, I get to talk to someone about Dana Gould where most people, most civilians don't know about how the brilliance of Dana Gould. And so like, we just fit into everything. And we sort of, before we left that festival, we had been like, I was like, I've always been trying to do this book of photos. And the initial idea was I was going to get comedians to write about other comedians. Like Dana Carvey writes about Kevin Nealon.
Yeah.
Picture Dana Carvey, picture Kevin Nealon. Still a great idea. But
I'm like, when is this one come out?
Yeah, I know. But by the end of the time we left, we had come up with this idea of working together on the book. And, it only took us 4 years to get the book out, but
wow,
it's worth it.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's incredible. When we went out for, we immediately hit a pub. We went to a beer first before we did the High Line. Is that kind of your like bonding like to get people eased into? Because everybody's probably having
it's a good part
as a weird thing.
Yeah,
I feel like I feel like John didn't feel special anymore. Like you've done that with other guys.
No. I'm like, did you take everyone out for a beer?
Exactly.
I mean, it meant something when we were there, right?
I know. We were not on a date, my friend. We were not on a date.
You lifted me up onto the stool. You're much taller than me.
It's a good way to start if I haven't met someone already. You know, like let's just a lot of times I'll be like, okay, let's meet at this time. I always give some time in case people are late or whatever, and to be able to be like, okay, let's just pop into here and we'll watch the light.
Yeah.
And we'll see when the light gets to when it should be, and then we'll go out. And so there's always that sort of 20-minute, and this is what I'm talking when I'm hired to do a shoot, as opposed to say shooting backstage for a festival or a venue or something like that. That's just like, hey, can I get you for 10 minutes before or after the show, that kind of thing, the Steve Martin type shoot. But when someone hires me to go do a photo shoot and we go and shoot for an hour, I always kind of leave that extra time to go out but it's sort of built in to be like, let's see how, let's wait till everything is right, and then we'll slide out and do it. And it just sort of helps. And I like to talk to people about comedy, and I typically, with almost any comic, I know some of their friends, and then we talk about that and this, and before that we're sort of in a comfortable groove before we go out and do this personal thing, which is photography.
Yeah. How hard is it not to be? Because I would kill for most time. Like I bought a camera finally, like a few years ago. Actually, no, I think I got one recently, a new one. But I bought a Sony mirrorless, the A700, because I wish, you go to these clubs on the road and stuff like that whenever there's some of them, you're right. Some of them do have their own photographers, and it's great to see those people. And I love, but 9 times out of 10, it's just us. And I want to have some kind of memory of a thing. So like, I'll usually take photos of the other comics, but like, I can't believe that somebody was like, I mean, obviously Steve Martin and this Paul Provenza, and they're trying to work or whatever, but I would kill to have a photographer around all the time, because I want everything documented. Every right. Is it hard for you to not whip it out all the time? Do you know?
Yeah.
Sense when and when not to? And I shouldn't have said whip it out, by the way.
Yeah. So, no, you have to though. You have to though, because first of all, I never take anything without permission.
Okay.
And I'm not a candid photographer.
Okay.
Even a picture like Mort Saul laughing in that moment that you have there, he knew that I had my camera with me. We were doing a photo shoot. There's times when you have to not do it. And it's important to not do it. A moment that I think of like that often is that I was at the Fillmore. The Black Crowes were there. They were rehearsing for their gig.
Nice.
His wife was there, and his kids were there. And then he had this is Chris Robinson. He was sitting at the drums, and he puts his kid on his lap, and he's holding his son's hand, drumming with him. And it was this amazing shot. And I'm sitting there with my camera, and I couldn't do it because I was a house photographer, and we were waiting for the band to sit up. And if I started just shooting away, that was breaking the covenant that I had with the club.
Right.
And I just couldn't do it. So there's a few of those things that just happen, and you go, fuck, I can't do it. I can't do it. Seeing famous people at funerals and shit like that, you're like, wow, that's like, and just like, you just can't bring your camera to a funeral,
No, yeah.
And things like you see really tender moments of people and things like that, like, nope, can't do it. And but then like but then sometimes when you don't have your camera, like I was at a Doug Stanhope show in Oakland one time, and he calls me out from the stage. It's like, Dan, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm seeing the show, Doug. It's like, where's your fucking camera? I'm like, I'm not working. And he's like, and that's why I like you. Like, you're not always in someone's face with it,
Yeah.
And so yeah.
I actually had a crazy experience like that. I was doing an event, so I was doing run of show for an event, right? And it was Jay-Z and Beyonce. It was a family party for them, right? So it's their whole family is there, right?
Right.
So doing run of show, and I'm like the coordinator things, including the photographer. What happens is this guy Tim, super nice, I think the 13th Apostle is his like Instagram handle. He's shooting the party. He was hand selected by Beyonce to shoot this, right? But somebody said to him, hey, could you get a picture of the baby and Jay for me on my phone? And hands him the phone. Now it's a family member, right?
Right.
So he takes the phone and he's like, I figured it's a family member. He did it. Jay-Z like caught it out of the corner of his eye, beelined over to him. And he's like, listen, take all the pictures you want of me and my wife. He's like, nothing of the children.
Right.
And it was on a phone, so it looks extra creepy. So he's stunned. He doesn't even know what to say at this moment. Whatever. He comes over to me. He's like, listen, could you please, tell him that it wasn't me. It was this family member asked me to do it, blah, blah, blah. So I go to the whole chain of command, like one of his main assistants, and I'm like, hey, this happened. She's like, don't worry about it. He'll be fine. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. He's like, he's like, I'll convey it. But I'm like, how crazy is that? Like, even in the moment, he thought he was doing the right thing for like somebody in it.
Right. Because you don't want to be the guy that says to someone that ends up being like, that was my mother-in-law that you wouldn't take the camera. But on the other hand, like, that's the shit that sells to Us Magazine and stuff.
Yes.
Because you're the one, because they don't want it, then you're the one that gets the baby picture. That like it's really awful. It's really it's really terrible.
That's got to be a tough thing for you, like in your line of work, because you see the moment. I'm sure you see the moment so many times.
I was at a Dave Chappelle show at the Punchline one time, and my biggest the guy that I've always wanted to take my musician that I've always wanted to take a portrait with, was there, and I couldn't ask him. It was Tom Waits, and I couldn't ask him to take a picture because he was just a guest of the club.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck.
It's so weird. It's even weird. Like, I mean, when I was a young comic and I was starting out, they would be like, one of the things they would tell us all the time is like, don't ask the bigger guys for pictures. It's not professional. It's not whatever. And the funny thing is I regret listening to that for the most part, because there's a fine line between some of them might be they like it, they don't mind doing it, or not acknowledging them or whatever. But for the most part, I realize people love the posterity of stuff. Like, so I try. I mean, I don't walk up to people randomly, but if we're working together, I'm always like,
that's different.
Yeah,
totally different.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm like,
you're not asking them for an autograph.
Exactly.
Which is different. It's like, here, a picture of you and me together. We work together. I don't really see the problem with that. Like,
exactly.
For me, I never ask for autographs.
No.
Like, that's like, it just changes the entire dynamic of anything.
Absolutely.
Unless you're at a book signing and I get in line with everybody else and hand you my book, that's what you're there for. But never, ever, ever at anything else.
Right. Yeah. If we buy
but
something.
It's like, at the end of your run where you worked with some comic, especially now with phones, it's just, I don't see a problem with that. Especially you're asking, you're not doing it.
Right.
Yeah. I have another weird story with that too. John's heard this one too before. We were out one night with a good group, like a good celebrity group, right?
I know,
yeah. And one of my friends is like, oh, he Kim Kardashian's in the bottle group. He's like, hey Kim, take a picture real fast. So he takes it. But now he gets abused by like all the other celebrities that we're there with, and like, what are you, a groupie now? And he's like, it's the most famous Kim in the world. Type in Kim in Google and she's coming up. Like, why are you breaking my balls?
Right.
But yeah, it's such a weird dynamic. Like, I feel like I've never been a picture guy, like to ask for a picture, but I always wanted the picture after the moment. So I'm like, I wish I would have been able to save that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's because everyone, like, that's another reason why I love satiristas, because half the time you're reading these books, from these guys. I love the middle section of a book, of an autobiography, whatever it is, and it's like backstage photos, all that stuff. I fucking love the history and seeing that kind of stuff. So it just, always like when there's a photographer around.
Yeah. I always don't like to jump ahead of that though, because I want the pictures to reveal the pictures to reveal as you're
me too
reading about it, right? And so you get to the part where it's like, and here's my second wife, and you're like, oh fuck, he divorces her. It's like a
spoiler.
Spoiler photos for sure.
I totally. Oh, I'm sorry, John. I keep saying, I wanted to ask about this photo too, because we have so many great photos. Yeah. That
one. It's funny because it totally leads into exactly what we were talking about. So this was at Just for Laughs, and I was backstage. I was doing backstage portraits there, and I was there to shoot Don Rickles, and they had done some sort of radio promo, meet Don Rickles. Right, and get a picture with Don Rickles. So but there was probably 15 or 20 people that won this thing and were in line to do this. And they roll him out, and not roll him out. He was very spry. That's a wrong way to say that. He was very spry and he was very sharp what was going on. And so, but he also subscribed to the Sinatra thing where you don't put your pants on until you're just ready to go out on stage. So he's in a robe. He's in a robe.
Awesome, by the way.
I know. And so he's in his robe, but underneath he's got a fucking tuxedo. And but so he comes in, and all these people are lining up, and they're all getting out their phones. And I'm seeing this happen, and because I'm going to get my photo of him after all these people are done. And it's twofold. I'm looking at like, this is going to suck with all these people with their cell phones and handing it off and doing this other shit thing. And then by the time I get to him, he's just going to be spent and not engaged. He's just going to be like, one more fucking photo on this. And they're starting to pull this stuff out, and I can see him kind of, and the handler was there. It was from the radio station and the festival. And I've seen this happen. Look at this, and I go, wait a minute. How about this? I'll take everyone's photo. You guys put your phones away. I'll do it all. You guys step in, boom, take the shot. I'll give it all to you, to the radio station. You supply it to all the winners. Everybody gets great photos. Nobody has to use their phone.
Wow.
And it makes everything easier. And boy, did fucking Rickles brighten up. And then it just went boom, boom, boom. And he was smiling with everybody. Chit chat, boom. It was done in 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then I get my stuff, and Rickles turns to me and he just goes, kid, you're great. And I'm like, the next best thing to being heckled by Don Rickles is to have him call you great.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, that worked out for me and for him and for everybody. But it was like, I just like stepped in. I'm like, this is going to fucking suck, especially someone like of that era where people are fumbling and can you do this? And who's going to take it? And blah, 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 blah. Like, stop, put them away. That's not going to happen. But yeah, I was able to get Don Rickles say I was great.
Oh, it's fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
Can you throw up the Mitch Hedberg photo?
Yes.
Yeah, Mitch.
Because
Mitch.
Talk about a comic that everybody loves, misses.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
This had to be. Where was this backstage somewhere? And where?
That was in the liquor room of the Punchline.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's smoking a Briar's pipe. He's not smoking weed.
I was going to ask you, did you give him a pipe or did he have it?
No, he had one with him. He would smoke like a Briar's pipe, like he's fucking Hobbit or something. So it was like,
so cool.
It's the way pre-vaping, pre-anything of that.
Yeah.
He's like fucking has pipe. Yeah. So he was a great one for sure.
Yeah. Did you get to know him at all?
Yeah, I did. Like he was the guy that I was friendly with for sure.
Right.
And I can remember him at Just for Laughs one time, and he just looks, he goes, "You are very good at what you do." That was like simple, like, oh, thank you. Wow. Yeah. We were supposed to have a shoot like less than a year before he died in LA, and he canceled the morning of because I think he was sick. But yeah, that was unfortunate. I was going to have a full long photo session with him.
Damn.
That's probably the shoot that I regret missing the most. That and John Prine, which also got sort of canceled on me when I got there. But yeah, Mitch was a special dude for sure.
Is that a thing that you have to worry about when you're going somewhere? Like, has there ever been a client where you're just kind of like, oh, this is kind of touchy. I've got to kind of fly out to this thing. I don't know if they're going to make it. Yeah.
I mean, there's been some things where there's times when other people had made promises that they couldn't keep,
Right. So it's less.
Come to Paul McCartney's last concert. Don't worry. I used to be in his management. Well, I'm like, we don't even have tickets to this thing. Don't worry. We'll get you in. Bring your camera. We'll be backstage. I didn't even get to see that fucking show.
Wow.
This guy talked this shit up, and then I'm out. I'm like stuck on the fucking parking lot at Candlestick Park with my thumb up my ass and my camera on my back. And I'm like, oh, great. So you just talked a big game and just failed miserably.
Right.
But I had to try. I had to try. What if
of course.
said no? So that was a big fail.
Absolutely. Is there? Do you? I mean, obviously, you enjoy what you do and you enjoy the work of it all. But do you ever just take the camera? Like, do you ever get time to yourself to kind of just take photos of whatever you want? You know what I mean? Like for fun.
Sometimes, I travel. When I travel and stuff, I do like that. But I'm not a big landscapey guy. I'm not a big rockin' what we refer to as rock and tree photographers. I'm not a big one of those. We all, but yeah, so not so much. There'll be times when people are like, "Why are you taking a picture of this sunset?" I'm like, because it's a sunset. It's not going to really work on what you think it's going to do, and or like, this amazing city, skyline. It's like skyline's that fucking big, and your picture is going to be that big. It just doesn't convey what you're doing. So sometimes it's more. It's there's times when it's better to not have it, and you feel better not having it than doing it. There's times when I'm not allowed to have a camera in a place, like I had to come to grips with the fact that I was shooting at a Prince show, but I was shooting for the promoters, Bill Graham Presents, but I was there to shoot the pre-show party that Prince wasn't even at. And I did all that stuff, and then it was like, okay, I'm done, and I don't get to shoot the Prince show, but I got to see the Prince show.
Right.
So Prince was one guy that was very much like anti-photographer, or just he was just a control guy. He controlled everything. He didn't want anything out there that he didn't control. So it's like, okay, I don't have the control over that. My camera is away. I'm just gonna go and sit here and enjoy fucking Prince with Carlos Santana and Maceo Parker, and one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen, and I couldn't shoot it. But sometimes that's okay, and you just be like, okay, I'm just putting it up in here,
Yeah, that's a real trade-off. That's like either being really in the moment or being able to try to like steal that moment
right. For sure. Because if I'm shooting it, like I can't not be shooting. There'll be times when people are like, oh man, that show must have been awesome. You were right there. What song were they singing? I'm like, fuck if I know. I was too busy shooting to remember what song that was.
Because I started a private Instagram account for like my friends and I, because I was like, holy shit, there's like 30 years of photos that I've taken, or whatever. Where the fuck do you put them? Nobody looks at albums anymore.
Right.
So I started this little account for everybody to kind of watch. But it's funny because I got through with the ones that were in an album. Right. And then once you started getting into the digital ones, I was like, how many fucking photos did we take? I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't believe, whatever. What is your, like, do you set a limit for yourself digitally now? Like in your mind, like, all right, I can't take more than this.
It's not a number so much. And I don't shoot that much music anymore. Since moving to Nashville.
I actually thought that's why you were in Nashville. I was like, that's why he's there.
The concert photography industry has been sort of ruined by that whole concept, is that now, the digital cameras are so good that you don't need to know how to expose, and you can just go up and shoot and just machine gun it and then pull from there, and people shoot, in a 3-song limit, people can shoot fucking 3,000 pictures if they want, and you might as well be shooting a video camera and just pull a video still. I'm not saying all concert photographers are like this or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, it's been really dumbed down. Whereas, when I started, you had to know how to expose slide film, which is very difficult to do, especially with blinky lights and changing conditions and everything like that. So even back then, I might only shoot 3 rolls of film, which is only, which is like 100 shots in a concert. Whereas, by the time I left and shooting digital, I could have easily shot 1,000. So and then also the professional photographers only get 3 songs or 2 songs or 1 song. It depends on the artist. And then everybody in the first 20 rows can be with their phone and getting the most amazing shots all show long. So it's changed the live concert photography thing for sure. But when it comes to portraits, I definitely have always had more of a conservation of what I do. I don't want to, like, I'm always I'm always ready to end it much more than extend it.
Mhm.
I've probably ended shoots before whereas I could have kept going, but I would rather end it too soon than not soon enough. Which is why when I was shooting musicians backstage after a show or something like that, it's just like I would just get in there and knock it out. But I could see, especially when digital happened, that they were used to all these photographers who would get out there and just keep shooting until they finally like fucking stop.
Yeah.
It's just, how did you not get it in the first 50 pictures you took of me?
Yeah.
There were times backstage I would shoot 10 shots.
Mm-hmm.
You got Tom Jones for 30 seconds. You take 10 photos. As long as you were prepared, you got it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you usually know. I'm assuming you know exactly are you taking them and then at one point you're like, oh, that's a shot I'm gonna send him, or that's a shot I really want to use.
A lot of times. But when I started, you couldn't look at the back of your camera and see what that was.
I didn't. I just took that for granted.
No, you waited until you got it back from the lab, and then
Lord.
I did get it.
Right.
What I thought I got.
Nice.
But in most of the situations, I'd taken a Polaroid first, so I knew that I had my exposure right. And so I knew that part was right, but I didn't necessarily know that I got the moment until I get it back from the lab.
How long does it take before I'm assuming you're like secure enough in what you're doing that you just know, like, okay, I know when I got it, I know when I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But how long does that take between starting and where you are now? Like, what's the midpoint where you were like, all right, I got it, I trust myself?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the thing is, I was working as a portrait photographer a long time before before celebrities, were in front of me. So I knew after a couple of years what I was doing in terms of lighting and things like that, and I knew I knew how to put myself in the best situation to succeed when it comes to lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, as long as I'm looking in front of me and I know what I'm doing here, and I see that someone's not, horribly uncomfortable or something like that, I kind of know what I got at the time. There's certainly times when I know like that just didn't work well, but I'm not going to grab somebody and shake them and say, relax, that doesn't really work.
Right.
So I was more, I was nervous the first couple of years, but that was before I had celebrities in front of me. So by the time I was comfortable enough to know what I was doing for that.
Right. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, because I was like, it's got to be like, I don't know. For comedians, it's always like if you're getting too comfortable, then you're gonna fucking suck. If you have too much confidence.
Right.
But you guys have to know. Like that's a profession where you're like, oh yeah, if I'm unsure, then I haven't gotten shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you come back, especially, thankfully, I didn't do a lot of magazine work or newspaper work. Most of my work was for venues. Or for the comics themselves or the musicians themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a editor lording over me and telling me what to do. So like 98% of the time I was just doing what I wanted to do, and it was a great freedom to have, where it wasn't someone saying, you get this kind of picture, do this sort of thing. So it was a great luxury to just do what you wanted to do. And when it came to working at the clubs like Fillmore and Warfield and stuff like that, the clubs would get me the photo pass to come in and shoot the show live, but it was up to me to go and meet the road manager and talk to them and convince them to come and sit for me. And so it was really sort of all on me to do that sort of thing. And so if I got the backstage portrait, that was the bonus. I wasn't expected to do it.
Gotcha.
So that was the only thing. And unfortunately, the people that are shooting there now, they don't do any backstage stuff. It's all just live.
That's
and
a bummer.
to me, that's like that's like a huge loss, because that's other than that, it's, the person's on stage, they're on taking there's a million people taking pictures of them on stage, even at that venue, even on that night of the show, there's 8 photographers with you in the pit shooting the same thing. The real value is getting backstage and getting them for a moment, on the staircase or in the dressing room or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In my mind, that was always the real value of it.
Yeah. I still have a hard time like saying I want to, or I want to grab a photo. Like I've been on Sirius Radio, when you're allowed to go back into the studio and doing that kind of shit.
Right.
Where like I would be like, man, I'd love to get a photo of everybody in this room right now and just kind of do a thing. I don't want to be that guy though. And then I'll be on with some guests who are just like doing like a 180 like thing or whatever. And I'm like, the balls. How do you? And no one can say anything either. But I'm always just like, fuck. I wish I could have just do that. You know, I never know, man. I never know if people are gonna be like, oh, fucking camera, this guy. But
right.
I think people appreciate it later. I don't know. Like my when I was younger and I was taking photos of me and my friends, I was the guy with the camera. That was it. Like all my photos, I'm not in them.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Did they give you? Because my friends
High
would go
school,
like,
everything.
Live in the moment. Why whatever. Cut to 30 years later, they're like, do you have a photo of me and that girl? That we did? You know? And I'm like, actually,
yes, I do.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. No, that was me. That was me. That was me. My very first camera. I found it. I was at Stanford University for a journalism convention. I was a junior in high school with my soon to become girlfriend at the time, and we found it. We were just at a little cafe, and we looked down. And there's a fucking camera bag right there. What the fuck is this? And we look in it. It's a Canon A1 with a telephoto lens and a flash and all this stuff. Wow. We're like, okay, well, this is amazing, but we're like, we can't keep this. This is someone's shit, you know?
Yeah.
So we found a lost and found, and we turned it in. But then we're thinking, you know what? What if no one comes and claims that shit? You know, that wasn't right either. So at the end of the journalism thing, it was 2 days later or whatever, 2 or 3 days later, we're like, fuck it. We went to the lost and found. Hey, did anyone turn in a camera? Like, you're in luck.
That's amazing.
So that was like, you know, that was my first kit of gear.
If they, I've got it. Are you like an older camera guy, like collector? Do you collecting that stuff?
Well, I might still have my Hasselblad.
Oh, okay. See, okay, nice. So
and a 4x5 Crown Graphics.
Oh, nice. I gotta show you. I mean, if I could grab them, I would, but I want to get up and walk into the blurred background. But I'll text you. I have my grandfather's old camera. He loved cameras, like video cameras. He had you remember those? I think they were like 60, 70 spy cameras.
Oh yeah, Minox.
Yes,
they're little 110.
They're so fucking cool, man. I've got one of those.
Those are cool.
I have a bunch of his cameras, man. They're so great. I'll send them to you.
Yeah, those are awesome. Cool. The problem is the images are garbage because they're that fucking big.
I know.
The negatives are so tiny, but they're really cool to like whip out and be like,
exactly.
You know, documents, photographing documents in the the evil masterminds, office.
Yep. Oh, fucking so cool. And he had one too, and I don't know what this one's called either, but it's a built-in case. It's got a case already, so like it opens up from the thing. It's like the one in Roger Rabbit.
That's probably a Crown Graphics. A 4x5. It pops down and the bellows come out, and it's like a big thing. And that's the one that you would see like in the old times when it's just like, you're coming out of the police station and someone's like pop, and then that's the moment. That's a 4x5 Crown Graphics camera. Yeah, I have one of those.
Oh, nice.
I had some fun with that when I was in grad school, photographing 4x5 sheet film. Oh wow, really cool.
That's awesome. And I think the one before that is the one where the bird comes out of it and goes, "It's a living."
Yeah,
and like,
goes and chisels it in the back of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I love that. I just want to bring them up before we're gonna let you go. I swear to God, but I like the photo of. First of all, I love Judah.
Yeah.
How it had to be so much fun for just getting this guy's essence. That is his. I mean, I don't know how you even did that, but that is everything he embodies right in one photo.
Yep. Right. So that's funny. This was at Just for Laughs, and it was in the hotel lobby. And I was
awesome.
And I was setting up for someone. To be honest, like this is funny because it's like you just nailed that with Judah. Truth is, I was setting up to shoot someone else who was I'm spacing on his name right now. He was the producer of Arrested Development. What's that guy's name? Like
Jim Valley?
The showrun? No, he's the showrun. Like the guy.
It's
Hurwitz.
Hurwitz. Mike Hurwitz.
Yes. Yeah. So that's who it was, I believe. And I was setting up, and I wanted to do something cool with him. And I was looking, and I was like, I need to test this shot. And I look around and I see Judah. I'm like, so that's the guy. And so I'm like, Judah, come over here. And because I'm like, he's always, Judah, his whole shtick is that he's always the baddest ass motherfucker in the room.
Yep.
And it's like, I got fucking fire behind me, motherfucker. And so in this case, the test shot ends up being the one that I really love and use. But nice. I was setting it up for someone else. But then when I saw Judah, I'm like, oh, you've got to be the guy,
Yeah.
I love him. Yeah.
Oh, fucking phenomenal. Yeah.
I have pictures of him without pre-beard.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, those are rare. It's
yeah,
a collectible now.
Yeah, for sure.
You need to
sell it as an NFT.
Yeah. Oh my God. That'd be great. You need to make a series of stand-up trading cards. Yeah. And with their stats and best joke in the back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah. And maybe what they were arrested for. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I could work with like the canceled comics playing cards.
those gotta be the...
I'll trade you a Louis C.K. for a Chris D'Elia.
The Chris D'Elia comes with gum on it to like
right,
give a kid.
exactly.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Right.
Great.
It's like, oh my God. Like, man, you got it. Aziz Ansari, they pulled that. They stopped printing that because he got uncanceled.
Oh my God! Now it's just a hologram card. You can't get him in the set anymore.
Right.
That's fucking great, man. And one more, the Bill Burr one. This looks like that's again captured the complete and total essence of it. But that looks like it was spur of the moment. Were you on a shoot?
It was pretty spur of the moment. It was that was in Scotland. And he had done, it was in Edinburgh, and he had done, he was like the big act, I mean, obviously Bill Burr is huge.
Yeah.
He was the biggest act that was playing because, most of the time it's comics there for a month, right? Or at least 3 weeks, and you're doing this stuff. But Bill was one guy that they basically helicoptered in there to do, I think, just one show. And so he was like the biggest star there. I've known Bill for quite a while. And so I was able to just be like, Bill, get a quick shot of you afterwards. He's like, yeah, come on out with me. And so we just did this. And like, as he was just like sort of walking back to his hotel, we did this quick little thing. And like, another example of something like, I don't want to take up some guy's fucking all this time, especially you just got done a show, everything else. And I don't want to be that guy. And like, it's not like I don't have shots of him. He's just kind of like, it's at the point now where it's just like, he's such a huge headliner, whether it's a cluster fest or whatever. It's just like, oh, Dan to his, okay, I know I'll give you, give you what you need. And he knows I'm just like super quick. So he's like, boom, 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 we're done. Thanks, Dan. Later.
Awesome. Yeah.
So yeah,
that's very cool.
Same way. So like David Cross, he's just like, you are the easiest, best photographer to work with ever. And it didn't mean about my work. He meant the fact that I was just like super quick and easy, and I didn't fuck around, and I didn't like take up a lot of his time. It's like he likes me just because I'm the quick photographer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which is okay. Quick, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's one of the weird cases where a guy being quick and good at what he does, it's a bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta love that.
I want to pull up one more too, if we could.
Oh, there we go.
Another one.
Yeah. Patrice. I mean, he was such a monster, fucking love that shot. He was so good, and there's been talk about putting that as a mural in New York City.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah, but it's anything with Patrice involves Patrice's estate and his family, and nothing's ever easy with that. Yeah. And so it's trying to figure out how navigate that minefield between his manager and their family and all this other stuff. Yeah. It's just not easy, but I would really love to see that, make that happen.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because he was so good.
When
what's funny is that,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying that first time I saw him, everyone had been talking him up, and I'm like, okay. And then he did an interview for Satiristas, and he's like, yeah, man, there was like a year and a half when I was just coasting and I was phoning it in. I'm like, that's the first time I saw you. And then I had seen him since then, like how amazing he was. And I was fully like in the cult of Patrice.
Right.
But the very first time I saw him, I'm like, it was all crowd work, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But later thankfully I got to see the full Patrice genius.
Yeah. Elephant in the Room, probably one of the best stand-up specials. Yeah.
So good.
Talk a little bit about 800 Pound Gorilla Records, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't get to mention that.
Sure.
But that is phenomenal for comedians and for you.
Sure, yeah. So I left San Francisco to come work in Nashville for a record company called 800 Pound Gorilla Records, and I'm the head of A&R here, which basically means that I work with between me and a number of people here, and we decide that's the talent part of a record label. So we just sort of decide who we record and do specials for and things like that. And, my world is primarily in audio, but we also do, video specials as well, increasingly more and more.
Nice.
There's a blend of like what means a special anymore. You can have, something that's really, really low budget and looks really good, up to, your $80,000 Netflix level special. But, there's all talk about the Andrew Schultz model, or, everyone's talking about what Mark Norman did. That was with us. We did that with Mark.
Great.
And
awesome.
It's like, and it was, it was not a $100,000 shoot, but for me, I work mostly in audio, and I work with Sirius XM, which is really the primary revenue stream for comedy audio, because the streamers pay so little. But they're but if you get onto Sirius XM, you can make like really decent money. So I work a lot with that and try and find the more unique voices that will get noticed and played on Sirius XM.
Nice.
So that's I get to go around the world and see comedians, and get to go to Edinburgh and Montreal and all these things, and doesn't suck. So I haven't been doing as much photography as I expected moving to Nashville, because I moved here 2 months before everything shut down. So I'm kind of like figuring out, figuring out like getting back into shooting music. And, when I do still shoot comics at the festivals and stuff like that. So I've kind of like took a little bit of a hiatus. When I eventually, look back on the arc of my, like the list of my shoots and stuff, there's going to be like 2019 to 2021 is pretty,
right. Yeah. It's going to be weird.
But that's like, everyone else is like, how many shows did I do that? Or what, all you comics, like,
absolutely.
We all felt the pain in that too. So
we lost. It doesn't even count.
Yeah.
I'm not even counting my age.
We lost
anymore.
2 years for sure.
Yeah. I like that you're doing a record thing, man, because you have a great. Obviously, you got the photographer thing, but you actually look like you would work an A&R in a record. Like, you know what I mean? Like you really have that kind of vibe, man. We were like this, just like Philip Seymour Hoffman in Almost Famous, man. It's like that shit.
That's how I had to explain it to people when I said, I'm moving to become the head of A&R. And like, what is that? I'm like, well, so like every rock and roll biopic you ever see,
right?
It starts them meeting each other and playing shitty gigs and everything, and then somewhere in the middle, they're playing a mid-level club with 150 people in the crowd, and really young people, and they're fucking loving it and they're killing it. And then it cuts to a guy that's slightly out of place, at least probably 10 years older than everyone else in the room, and he's nodding his head. It's like, yeah, man, that guy gets it, And then the next scene is backstage, band is toweling off, and here's the guy handing him the record company card. I'm like, that's A&R. That's the guy. That's the guy that does that.
Awesome.
So
that's been great.
But it's fun, and sweet. Especially because it's not a whole lot of that left in. Not that it doesn't exist in music, but it's just so different. And comedy records are still very personal. In meeting people, and you can talk directly to the artists, and it's not all about how much social media they have and all that stuff. We sign people that have zero social media sometimes. It's not that it's not a factor if someone's killing it on there, and
sure.
We figure that stuff in, but there's times when you can just be like, you're just really funny, and we're willing to like go for it. Sometimes we hire and put out records we know are not going to make money. But it's just they're so funny, and we want to be able to do that. And it's like a publishing company where you're willing to bet on a book you don't expect to make money, because that you've got John Grisham in your publishing house, and the money that they make off of that is gonna fund all the indie people and the people that are doing stuff that's really different and not so commercial and things like that. So it's a lot of fun, and I work with a lot of really great people here, and it's a really very, very artist friendly label.
That's great, man. Yeah, artist friendly is great because a lot of places do not do that kind of stuff.
Right.
I just had a conversation with a PR firm that was like that I had just been talking to about somebody else. We're doing a live show. I'm headlining the DC Comedy Loft in July, and we're doing our first Dystopia tonight live because the club was like, why don't you take another day and just do a gig? So we're working on getting a guest or whatever, and I called a PR company, and they were like, well, how come we don't represent you? And I wanted to be like, well, first of all, I don't have any fucking money. Second of all, like I'm calling about $1 million client here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So then I was just like, I'm like, okay. And then, but they still wanted to talk to me. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And then at one point we were talking, I was like, look, obviously I don't have the money to do whatever you want me to do with you guys. And I was like, but do you work off contracts? I'm like, do you work off a deal? Like, cause I gave them everything I've been doing, and they were like, we love it. You're really popping, blah, 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 all this other crap. And then, but I was like, okay, but if you think I'm, worth investing in, like, let's sign a contract where, I'm going to pitch to Apple at the end of the summer. So, work with me until then. And if nothing happens, if it does happen, I'll work with you guys. And she was like, we used to do that, but we're actually owned by this other company and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how did I miss that boat? When did you use it?
Right.
Yeah, they won't do it anymore. So that's good to hear that you guys will like, when you've got like
an artist,
John Grisham, somebody like that, you can find an artist and work with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great, man. I'm going to ask you the last 3 questions we ask every guest.
Yes. Okay.
First one is
strap in for this.
Yeah, strap in, man.
All right.
Button another button, unbutton it, whatever you got to do. So
unbutton. I'm an unbutton. I'm an unbutton guy.
We love it.
Nice.
So if you go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
Let's see. Well, certainly be better with money, but that's everybody, just, I mean, I don't know, stick with it. I've always felt like I kind of always stuck with what I wanted to do, stay the course. I always loved comedy and music and photography, and I just went go straight out, go right for it. People say, oh, mate, you need to go pay your dues. You got to strap in and pay your dues and stuff. I didn't want to do that. And I wanted to just go straight out for what I'm doing. And I was the house photographer at the Fillmore when I was 22 years old, and had all these things that if I was sitting around waiting to pay my dues, I would have I would maybe still be there and not done that sort of shit. So
absolutely.
I mean, my advice would be sort of other than, regular practical advice, it would be just just do what you stick with what you love,
Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. Second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
Well, that was my gig at the Fillmore.
Okay.
It would have been really hard to leave that. But I was told that my work was not Instagrammy enough.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So what I was basically told so that was the word that was used. It was not Instagrammy enough because I wasn't going and doing a lot of anyway. So that was the thing that had to end, because it would have been really hard to leave that, to say, you know what, I'm giving up all this and doing this, and I'm going to Nashville to work for this indie record company that ends up but it's actually a major in terms of record companies when it comes to comedy records. So it would have been hard to leave that gig, but I was unceremoniously booted from that gig.
Wow. That is crazy. Yeah. Instagram, 20 years into Instagram. Holy shit.
Yep. I was 20. I was 20. I was there for 20 years.
Wow. That's fucking nuts. And the last question ties into the show. One of my favorite questions. Sure. If this was a genuine dystopia and it was the last day on Earth for everybody, zombies, aliens, comet coming to Earth, floods, what would be your epic death? How would you want to go out?
Ooh, all right. Let's see. Well, Wow. You know, I always had this like thought of, you know, and maybe it goes back to the comic books of like fucking falling into the sun.
Yeah.
You know, that idea of just being like, fucking, that's it.
Yeah.
No, you know, burning up into the thing. So it would have to be some version of that, you know, finding something that you could just go in and fucking dissolve and like just vaporize,
Instant
you know,
vaporize. Yeah.
something like that. That would like, I guess it sort of goes back to those like X-Men, you know, Phoenix saga era of like going into, if you go into the sun, you know, you might come out again. You know, that's how you get reborn. So I always had, there's always that sort of thing. That would some version of that.
Yeah. Speaking my language with the X-Men stuff, man. Marvel, X-Men. Next time you're gonna come back on, we're gonna talk comic books.
Don't let this fucking hip rock and roll exterior booyah fucking super nerdy. My kids don't let me forget it. My kids do not let me forget it. When I showed my son, I last showed my son my comic book collection, I thought it'd be like, oh my God, it's so that's so cool. You saved these from the not the 7, but like from the 80s.
Yeah, 80s.
So cool. He takes one look at all the boxes. He was like 7 years old, looks at all the boxes I had. I finally showed him in the attic. He looks at it, looks up at me and goes, why so many?
Oh God! Oh, that's fucking great.
Stab, rip,
heartbroken. Yeah.
So.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Cool, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. Pleasure meeting you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Good time, man. Let's hang it next time I'm in New York.
Please,
or when we come to Nashville, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We got to do another shot. I'm hairier now.
Just slightly.
just slightly. Take care, man. Have a good night.
Guys. Cool. Peace. Cheers.
Dystopia tonight.